everybody, welcome to another episode of Capital Spotlight. Today on the podcast, we have Michele Exner. She was a head honcho in Republican politics for a while. I knew her as the communications director for, at the time, Leader McCarthy. She has a ton of experience in communications, both on the Hill and off the Hill. She worked for the military in the public affairs unit for quite a time. She is a Marine. She loves to run, so she's got a really cool background. Tune in to check her out. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Capital Spotlight. We're here today with Michele Exner. A lot of people in communications on the Hill might know who you are. They might have been in a meeting with you at some point, a comms briefing. So welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on, David.
So you've got some cool titles in your history and currently. Would you mind just giving everyone a brief introduction to your professional background?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've spent about 20 years in communications. Actually got my start as a public affairs officer in the Marine Corps, which is pretty awesome. And then I had the privilege of working about 6 years on Capitol Hill, where I got a chance to interact with wonderful staffers like yourself when you were there, and then got a chance to work for Senator Tim Scott and former Speaker Kevin McCarthy. And right now I'm in another fight as a parent. This is one that's very personal to me. So I am with Parents Defending Education. I'm the senior advisor at Parents Defending Education and then Director of Federal Affairs for Parents Defending Education Action.
Nice. That's great. That's a lot to get into. I don't even know where to start with this one, but I would love to hear a little bit just about your military background, how you got involved in the Marine Corps, and that public affairs side of things.
Okay, absolutely. So let's see how I got involved in the Marine Corps. So when I was about 10, my sister, who was about 20 at the time, she's a couple years older than me, she decided to join the Marine Corps. So that was a big deal for her family. No one had done something like that. And so I got a chance to go to Parris Island, watch her graduate along with other privates and private first classes from Parris Island. And it was one of those transformative moments of my life. And so I just thought, I want to do that. Fast forward, I was a junior in high school, and my sister again, so I credit a lot to her, took me around Annapolis, and I got a chance to see midshipmen walking around. And I'm like, that looks cool. I want to do that. And then I had applied, and I had the privilege of attending the United States Naval Academy. And then from there, so once you graduate, as most people know, you owe this amazing country a couple years of service. You owe 5 years of service. I decided to go join the Marine Corps. Like I said, that seed was planted earlier on through my amazing sister. And then as I got a chance to interact with more Marines, I'm like, these people are awesome. They're intimidating, they're funny, and their uniforms are pretty awesome too.
Yeah, they're the best.
Yeah, so absolutely great selling point all around, and tough, and physical fitness is always the best. No offense to my other brothers and sisters in arms in the other branches of service. So like I said, decided to service select Marine Corps. And then from there, every Marine goes to the basic school, and you compete for a different military occupational specialty, which translates to civilian terms, a job. And for me, the top choice is public affairs officer. So essentially, as most of the audience in DC would know, is essentially a communications role. I was fortunate enough to get it, and then here I am. I got a chance to do public affairs job for a couple years in the Marine Corps, including several deployments, and then I got a chance to transition and do it on Capitol Hill.
Very cool. And we'll definitely dive more into that. But first off, let's hear a little bit about how you grew up. Like, where are you from originally? What was that process
absolutely.
Growing up?
Okay, so my dad is from Dominican Republic. My mom is from Puerto Rico. They came here. My dad came here, I want to say in the late 60s, was probably 13, 14 years old. Actually came from Dominican Republic, just carrying a brown paper bag with all his belongings. And they settled in northern New Jersey. So humble beginnings. My dad was a truck driver, and my mom worked in a factory. I had a wonderful childhood, just saw them work hard and give us everything we needed to just have a great upbringing. And something that I remember just how hard they worked. I still have this memory. I mean, at 2 a.m. consistently, the alarm would go off because that's when my dad needed to go to work. And that was just normal. I never remember him taking any sick days, just taking time off of work. It was just, that's what he needed to do. And so I think set an incredible example for my sister and I. And so, yeah, that was our upbringing. Grew up in Union City, New Jersey, which, and I have to say this. So it was then Congressman Bob Menendez's congressional district. And so kind of a fun tie-in is that when I needed to go to the Naval Academy, you need a congressional nomination. And so Representative Menendez at the time was my congressman, so I went and interviewed, and he actually gave me my nomination to the Naval Academy. Cool. And so the rest is history, but thank him for that.
Yeah, shout out. Good stuff. Well, that's very cool. And then before we dive too much into the professional side of things, we also want to know who you are today outside of work. So who is Michele Exner? I know you love to run marathons. Yes. So we know that the Marine Corps was part of that process to get you interested in running, but tell us more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember it was, I guess it was both my sister and a roommate I had in college. They'd just run for fun, right? And I never understood.
Crazy
I'm like,
people.
Right? I'm like, this is miserable, right? Like my side hurts. I feel like I'm out of breath. This is tiring. Why do they do this for fun, right? Yeah. And so the more I started doing it, I figured I'm kind of good at this. And so my sophomore year, it was my junior year at the Naval Academy, me and two of my buddies decided to sign up for the Marine Corps Marathon. And so we dabbled in some training, not a lot, nothing too serious for college students. We were more preoccupied with going to drink in downtown Annapolis than we were in a strict marathon running routine. But there we were. So, we did the marathon, and it was pretty miserable, as you can imagine, about mile 18. I'm like, why did I do this? But the atmosphere, especially for the Marine Corps Marathon, that's a local DC marathon, so I'm sure a lot of people kind of see the energy around that. It's coming up in about, I think it's October 26th, so a couple weeks here. And just the energy around that, right? Obviously, the patriotism, the Marines out there, they're the ones manning the water stations, right? So that gives you a little boost of energy. And then at mile 14, they have they're essentially a memorial for fallen service members. And so that is just, it makes it really impactful, right? That is a unique run where you get to run through the nation's capital and also remember kind of those that sacrifice so much in defense of our nation. So really, really impactful all around. And then after that, I was just hooked. So I signed up for several more marathons. I think now I'm up to about 20. So a couple of Marine Corps. I've done 10 Boston marathons, including one 3 months after I had my daughter, which that was pretty good. I feel good about that accomplishment. And then some other unique one. I did a satellite Marine Corps marathon in Al Asad, Iraq. So while I was deployed in 2009, I got a chance to run a marathon in Iraq. So that was a great experience. And now I'm hoping to instill that same passion for my kids. Really selfishly, I want to raise running buddies to go run these races with me.
That's why you have kids, right?
Yeah, that's why you have kids. My husband stopped running with me about 10 years ago. He's a Marine too, but has realized like I'll do the lifting. You can go run the races for us. But so they're enjoying it. I just ran a first 5K with my daughter a couple of weeks ago, and again, that was just it's why running is so special.
For sure. How many kids do you have?
We have 2.
Good stuff. And what is that process like, being a parent and being a professional and a highly successful professional at that?
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much. Very kind of you. So we moved here in 2016. My husband was still an active duty Marine officer. He was working at the Pentagon. At the time, our kids were young. They were 1 and 2. It's a challenging age, right? It's a fun age, but also it's, toddlers are a little, they're tough. And so we moved from North Carolina to DC, and wow, that was a change. So we had been stationed in North Carolina, and just different pace of life, right? Not all this crazy traffic that you have. And then we moved up here. I was excited to kind of start my first career, my next chapter after serving in the Marine Corps. And so I was fortunate to find a job with Senator Tim Scott, and was press secretary for 2 years. And so as far as managing, work-life balance, and it's hard to call it that, you're really just surviving, right? Yeah. You're just doing what you can to survive. And I think the key there is to find the ideal spouse to do that with, your perfect partner in crime, right? Or partner in life, I should say, not crime, but your perfect partner who just is a balance to everything, right? And what we've realized is sometimes that his career is kind of is ahead a little bit, so I can kind of take that back seat a little bit and be there for our kids. Also, external help, whether it was nannies that we had to bring in, whether it's my awesome parents who moved to the area who also chip in and help, and I'm sure they're loving it as grandparents. That they're able to help is really so to have that community that can help provide. And so at this point, they're a little older, so life has gotten a bit easier with them. Sure. And so I like to describe that as we've done video game levels in reverse. So we've started at a 10, and I think right now we're at about a 2.
Nice.
And so we're at a super fun age. They're a lot more manageable, and and now it's like we've accomplished so much. We've done so much in DC. Personally, for me, I've done more than I ever thought if you would have asked me when I left the Marine Corps. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know it's extremely hard to raise a kid, period, but experiencing people on the Hill who are parents or who will also say, I'm on the Hill, like I don't really have time to raise a family right now, so I'm going to like push that off a little bit. What is your advice to those people? Like, can you successfully run a family / work on the Hill? To me, it's like, geez, it's so many hours. It's so hard. So how do you do it?
Yeah. If you would have asked me at 25, 26, again, same amount of hours, same time, probably more commitment in the Marine Corps because you're being asked to deploy and all of that in the training. And I would have said, no, having kids is too difficult, right? Like I don't have time for that, and I need to focus on my career, right? Because if I have kids and all of these things, I'm going to have to sacrifice, and all of these things, including career. And you know what? Now I realize like that was all I don't know, like a myth that I started to believe by perceptions around me. Honestly, having children was the best thing that happened to me. Nice. It was life changing. It gave my life more purpose than I ever thought possible. And so for something like that, you figure it out, right? Yeah. And like I said, you're there with the team. Obviously, it helps if you work for great bosses who are supportive of the family environment, right? Yeah. That's important. I've been very fortunate to have that in both offices that I've worked with in DC. Incredibly family friendly. They understood how important being there for your kids is. So my advice to sum it up is have those babies because you will never regret having a family. Watching my kids accomplish things right now is the coolest thing that I do every day. So
yeah, I can imagine.
Have kids.
Yeah, there you go. You heard it here first. Have kids. Love that. As far as what your family does, outside of like who you're, again, let's go back to who Michele is. Sure. Outside of politics, because we do want to hammer on that. What do you and your family like to do together outside of running?
Okay, so outside of running, well, now you've taken off a lot of things that we do. So a lot of sports activities. Our son does hockey, so we love either watching him practice or watching out there. They both do golf, so we love doing that as a family. And let's see, trips. We love vacations together. We took them on a couple of international trips. So they're, like I said, they're older, so they're a little easier. Yeah. So we tried to dabble in some international trips last year, and they were phenomenal travel buddies, right? It was like traveling with little people, even tried escargot. And so I was very impressed with how they handled all of that. And so traveling has been incredibly fun. We did Paris. We took them skiing in Germany. Nice. So we went to Garmisch in Germany, and Zugspitze is the highest point there, and they skied there, and I'm embarrassed to say that they ski better than I do, although they're very young now. Don't hold it against me. I grew up in a Hispanic family. In northern New Jersey, we did not go skiing. So I learned at 30, I think I was 30 plus when I started learning, so I do what I can to keep up with the family.
Yeah, when I was 13 too, I had a death wish, like it was go down the hill as fast as humanly possible. It doesn't matter what happens to my body, because I'll recover. When you learn later in life, it's like, I got to protect this thing.
Yeah.
Like it's aching already. I don't need anything else.
Absolutely. Now, then it's like nothing's going to happen to me.
Yep.
Invincible. Now it's like everything will happen.
Yes.
I will break. I will hit a tree. And so, it's pretty terrifying. But I figured out how to do my pizzas and French fries down the hill. And, maybe they got to wait for me down there. But we're having a great time. And nothing like being in the outdoors.
For sure.
Just with family.
And then you also went to Costa Rica recently?
We did. We went to Costa Rica. Wanted kind of an adventure, and so that's what we got. Did some rainforest and hiked to the waterfall, did some horseback riding, went snorkeling, our zip lining, which I don't know if if anyone out there has done the zip lining in Costa Rica, but wow, it is not for the faint of heart. I was the first one in our family to go. Ooh. And the employee said, okay, there you go. And I was like, I don't see the other end. I see the bottom of the rainforest. I see a volcano, and don't see where I'm supposed to go, just clouds. And so quite exhilarating.
Brave.
But yeah, we all made it. Really proud of the kids who they didn't hesitate. They were like, let's do this. And so there's a lot of pressure when you have two Marine parents that you just got to be tough. And so we are doing our best to raise some tough, resilient kids.
So this could be a whole different podcast, but how do you raise tough kids in 2024? Okay.
So So it's not letting them quit. It's not we're not okay with complaining. Like if you sign up for something, you're going to see it through. You're going to go. Sure, there's a lot. If they're sick, I don't want you to judge me as a parent. Judge us as a parent. But if there's something about commitment. So if we have the discussion with them, okay, is this what you want to do? Because one, it's expensive, as you'll come to find out. These youth sports are pricey, and two, you made a commitment to do this sport, right? Our daughter's doing swimming now. She's got to wake up 2 days a week at about 6 to head over there, and then our son is doing hockey. These are tough sports, and so. So they have to see it through completion, right? And everything that we do, it's like try your hardest, don't complain. And this is kind of just an example. So we've gone to Disney a couple times. My husband loves that place. I humor him. And of course, the kids love it. And so, we leave the hotel room about 7 a.m. and we don't get back till 11. You're going. There's no complaining. We're all going to have fun. Okay.
There you go.
So it's those little things that I think that we teach them and instill in them every day to hopefully make them a little tougher, a little more resilient in life.
Yeah, it's hard, and it's great to have parents like yourself that are pushing kids to do that. You as a kid, you're like, oh, who cares? It's not that big of a deal. So to have parents that are reminding you, hey, you committed to this, it creates good habits. And I see that in my wife all the time. Her parents were very good at instilling that mindset, and you follow through on things. And it creates an exceptional adult, so it's an exciting part of life to be able to pass that on.
That sounds like you found the perfect partner to raise some kiddos with.
Yes, I sure did. She is much better than I am, so that's what we love to see. She's out of my league for sure. But all right, we'll switch into a little bit more of a professional gear here now. You were able to deploy out to Iraq. Tell us about that experience. I know you had a cool press moment out there too, but just fill us in.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got to Camp Lejeune 2008 and then found out that I was taking a group of Marines to Iraq, to Al Anbar Province, Iraq. So at the time, I was with a unit called 2nd Marine Logistics Group, which is based down in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. And so at that point, the major units in the East Coast and West Coast were essentially alternating every year. The command element would go to Iraq and then provide all the support for the ground troops on the ground. And so we were set to deploy in 2009, so obviously had to make sure that our Marines had all of their qualifications, other training that they needed to get done prior to that, and also all the work training and all the equipment that we needed, right? And so the Marines that I took was public affairs Marine, so primarily, same thing, writing press release articles, marketing and telling the audience and telling folks back home what the Marines were doing abroad and while they were deployed. And then we also had a combat camera, which is more on the documentation side, historian aspect of the unit. So we had those two that were at. So yeah, we deployed. It was January of 2009 where we all set off. And I still remember saying goodbye to my parents, and they were, of course, devastated and crying. And I'm like, I don't understand. This is awesome, right? I'm going to have a good time. Because I was at that phase in my life, still in my 20s, where nothing will happen to me. I'm invincible. And so my poor parents, and now I understand as a parent, like, oh, that's why they were sad, because they thought something could happen to me when I'm deployed in that kind of environment. But it was 2009 in Iraq. Things were relatively calm, and so. So that was good. Yeah, so we got there in 2009. Our team's workspace was in a bunker, which was pretty cool. And at that point, the base that we were living at was pretty developed, so nothing incredibly austere. But from there, got a chance to do some pretty cool things. So I got a chance to travel with the general of that unit to everywhere he went. So if he was at Fallujah visiting with a local police department, whether it was a local village leader that we were visiting, I got a chance to go there. I also was able to head up an Iraqi women's engagement group with fellow Marines on the unit. And so we would, I think it was like every week perhaps, or a couple times a month, we would go out to different villages nearby and just interact with the local women. Nice. Just sit down and have chai tea with them. And just, again, one of those humbling moments where you realize, one, how fortunate we are to live where we are, right? How blessed we are to be in America. And also to be able to understand what an entire other society goes through to just live. And also you realize some parallels, like they just wanted safety and security for their families and their kids. And so that was a really unique experience that was kind of in addition to my communications role. So like I said, I was there to provide the American public with insight into what our unit was doing there. And so with that, it was either press releases, it was newsletters that we were pushing back home, and any interviews that we could get with either Marines in our unit or senior leadership. So one of those cool experiences was, at the time, I was working for General Juan Ayala, and he had just okayed doing a Pentagon press briefing. And so obviously virtually, because we were not going to fly him back to the United States to do that. And so we had like a satellite hub, terminal hub that we would use for that. Unfortunately, of course, a week out, it is now inoperable. It is not working, and we need to figure this out, because if it does not work, we'd have to put this general in a convoy to go to, I believe it was Fallujah or Ramadi, one of the local bases, with another Marine unit who had this equipment, which is not ideal, right?
No. Don't ever want to go to Fallujah, even if it's 2009.
Yeah, it was 2009. So as a public affairs officer, I was like, I need to do everything I can to make sure this happens here in our base and not put him in harm or, in any security situations. And so we were working around the clock, our Marines. We called in reinforcements, other communications Marines that work on like tech equipment for the unit. And I think we had hours to spare, and we got this thing working. And so in addition to that, in addition to just making sure this works, making sure we can transmit in real time, I need to make sure that the boss was ready for what he was going to talk about. So I had a chance to, come up with talking points, sit down with him and talk him through, kind of what the conversation was going to be, or what the press briefing was going to be about, drafted some talking points. And so very memorable time. And fun fact, his son later was a staffer on the Hill, and I got a chance to interact with him. And so kind of it was fun to see the worlds colliding, coming full circle there.
That's crazy. So everyone who is kind of a comm staffer, or just a lot of people who come to the Hill in general, picture this idea of what it'll be like to work in Congress, and that there'll be these like big camera moments, or like these big press conference moments where everyone's around watching and you get to be in the middle of it. And for, I'd say probably like 90% of the staffers, that moment never really happens. And it's super weird now being a press staffer in Congress, or in general. It's just like people are just holding their phones around. And so it's not that like big camera over the shoulder moment the same way. But as being a communications director for the Speaker and being in these pivotal moments, are there some cool memories that you go back to where you're like, wow, that was a really cool moment to be in?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I'll start with my first boss. So Senator Tim Scott gave me my in Washington, D.C. So forever Team Scott on Team Scott. I got a chance. He has such a remarkable story,
For sure.
right? I got a chance to go to South Carolina with CBS Sunday Morning crew. I got a chance to walk through his childhood home, went to the barbershop he went through his neighborhood, got a chance to prep his mother for that press interview that she did. I think it was the first one that she did for him then. And I was like, this is pretty incredible. Yeah. Like, here I am with this senator who is really his story is the epitome of the American dream, and I'm helping tell that story by just creating this opportunity for him and helping kind of shape it. And so that was one of those moments where I'd step back. I'm like, that was pretty cool. And also, I think it was 2018, tax reform passed, and one of his big pieces of legislation was opportunity zones, and it was in there. And Senator Tim Scott was also one of the top 4 senators who contributed to the drafting the tax legislation. And so got a chance to again talk about this and market it and make sure that people knew what it would do. And the fact that I had Tim Scott's story to tell that was just awesome. And then I got a chance to go to the White House with him when it was signed into law. And again, it was those moments. I'm like, if you'd have told me 3 years ago when I was still sitting in North Carolina with no clue what I was going to do, it was so surreal. Yeah. And then working for the Speaker, I mean, that was, again, credit former Speaker Kevin McCarthy. I think to take a step back, like when members bring staffers in, they're taking a chance on these people, right? They're taking a chance that they can trust them with the information that's being talked about in that office. They're trusting them to represent the priorities of that member because it's their name. I know some people forget that, but it is their name on the door. And so they're putting a lot of trust when they say, yes, I want to bring you on, right? And so grateful for former Speaker Kevin McCarthy, grateful for the team that I had there. And so, when I'm going to break down kind of those memorable moments, I would say, one, the people, right? I think if you go back to Speaker McCarthy's staff, I think it was not unusual to see people that had been there 8, 9, 10 years, right? And that says a lot about the office climate. And our comms team was just incredible. When I drove into work, it didn't even feel like work. And it just felt like I'm going to go hang out with some like-minded individuals who are just so invested in what they're fighting for and what they're working for that it's going to be a good day, right? Yeah. Not all days were good, as you know, as you've been there, but at least we can wait the good days and know you're surrounded by good company. And then I think for me personally, and I think what inspired my passion for what I'm currently doing, it was the school closures, right? And so for me to be able to work on then Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy's staff and bring light to this issue, highlight this issue, I felt like I was being a voice for millions of parents across the country who were so frustrated, right? I mean, we were in Fairfax County, so I think we got the brunt of it, but so many across the country where you got to ask, like, how many kids lost out on their American dream, on their opportunities because the schools were closed. So I think for me to be able to kind of voice those frustrations through Kevin McCarthy, and having him, of course, be completely open to understanding, like, this is a big issue for families, right? And we need to talk about it. And so fast forward, we are able to he was also really big on bringing just normal Americans into the Capitol, have them have a front row seat to their government, right? This is a people's house. He loves saying that and making sure that people knew. And so we were able to so fast forward, 2023, we're passing the Parents' Bill of Rights. And we had a huge event in the Capitol. And, I remember looking at the audience because I got most of them there. And so looking, and it was just incredible. It was families. It was just normal families, had Marine families, just families that we knew in the area that were just sitting there, and they were just filled with so much hope and also admiration and just, I'm sure, in awe, right? When they're looking around and they're in Rayburn in the United States Capitol. And it was so impactful. Actually, one of our friends it's a Marine family, they have about 5 kids. Their Christmas card that year was of them and Kevin McCarthy. And so that stuff is just, oh man, that that's probably my favorite part of working in the Capitol, is bringing in extraordinary real Americans,
Yeah,
right?
for
People
sure.
out there, the ones that whatever policies are being passed in Congress, they're the ones that are being impacted, right? These are just incredible people, incredible families. And so to be able to bring them and see their faces light up when they're like, wow, someone cares about what I have to say. And then I'll end with this, because I think this was probably my favorite part. So the minority leader's office, there was this kind of nondescript hallway. You walk down, it looks like any other hallway, but then you open the door and you're out in Statuary Hall, right? And so I'd love to bring any visitors we had and walk out through that door and just look back at them and see, because again, they're taxpayers. This is their place as well. And so to be able to kind of give them insight into that was really special.
For sure. To see it again for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's super cool to bring people in on actual moments of Congress in session or working, because people will take tours through there all the time, and you get to experience it, or even a staffer walking through the hallways and experiencing it. It's one thing to experience it that way, but to walk into Rayburn Room in the middle of a press conference or in the middle of an event that the speaker is hosting or the leader is hosting, to experience Congress like in session, like alive, that I'm sure adds this different aspect of like, whoa, this is so cool.
Absolutely.
No matter if you're a staffer or anybody else, it's still very cool in those moments. So I think it's very interesting while you're working in politics, and I think a lot of people feel this way and some don't, but you get to work on issues that you're passionate about, and now you're in a place where you get to dedicate a lot of your time to a passion. So less so about the passion itself, but more about finding your passion and how you find ways to incorporate that into your profession. Do you have any advice there for people who are just kind of chugging along, working at a job, and they feel like there's something more?
Yeah, if a job feels like a job, you're probably not in the right spot, right? And I know, okay, Monday mornings, look, they're tough for everybody. So that's not what I mean. If you wake up Monday morning, you're like, I want to keep sleeping, that could be just everybody, right? So that's not a good measure of whether you like your job or whether you hate it. But I think if you get to Tuesday and Wednesday and you still feel like you really hate driving to your job or you hate what you're doing, it's probably time to kind of take a pause and maybe figure out where maybe you'll just have more fulfillment and enjoyment. And you spend a lot of time doing a job, so you should be happy about it. You should feel like what I'm doing should matter, right? And that was for me, just to kind of take a step back when I was thinking about where do I want to go after the Marine Corps. It needed to be big, right? When I've gone to serve my country and done things at that level and had so much fulfillment in my career, I knew that the next step, any other job just wasn't going to do. And so I got lucky with finding a job on Capitol Hill. Again, no DC experience, so I had very little hope, but but Tim Scott's office, they were able to pave a unique path for me. And so if you're out there just questioning your job, I will say this: you can't just jump around jobs. That's also not good. I think a good rule of thumb is wait till the year mark, right? I think 6 month mark, things should start to click. And then the 1 year mark, if you're still kind of miserable, then it's time to find something else. But as far as finding something you're passionate about, if you're on the Hill, you get a chance to see a bunch of different issues, right? And so I think taking a chance to kind of research all of those, kind of dive into all of those and see, like, where is my passion? And also, like, what are your strengths, right? What are you best at? Perhaps it's planning, logistics, research, writing, and where can you match those strengths to the perfect job? And I think that's really the best case scenario, you know, and it's not going to be, and I think for me, and I have one career example that you didn't touch on, but I think it would be important to know, because I think it's one of those moments where I'm like, this isn't for me. So left Tim Scott's office in 2018 just to, kind of look for a career advancement opportunity. Found a communications director role at CBS News DC Bureau. So I'm like, that sounds cool. I get to see things from a different perspective. I'd built some good relationships there after working in Tim Scott's office. spent a couple months there and realized this is just not for me. Especially I think after the Justice Kavanaugh hearing and watching that coverage was not just realized it's just not a setting for me. Fast forward, got fortunate with an opportunity in Kevin McCarthy's office. And so, again, one of those things that it might sound on, or it might look on paper like, hey, this is a cool opportunity, matches your skills and responsibilities. But if kind of the match isn't there, I think it's better to figure that out early and then just to go find a job that will make you fulfilled and happy.
For sure. So what does it mean, though, to be communications director for a news station?
Yeah, so I saw it as more like marketing and public relations,
Gotcha.
right? More of like the Hollywood Reporter. Yeah. And that's not me. That is not, I've never Variety. I don't read those publications. Don't do much with those. So it was just, very different from what I'm used to. And I think what is unique about doing communications on the Hill, that it's not just press releases. It's not just these statements you're putting together. For me, more, I want to say 95%, 100% of the time, it was because I cared about those issues, right? Yeah. So when I was writing something, sure, it was on behalf of my boss, right? But I was pouring everything I had into it because I cared about these issues. I wanted these policies for my family. Yeah. They mattered to me. And so when I didn't think about it then, right? Because I was just like, oh, that's cool, big network, right? I get to see different things. Still comms director. But then I was I'm like, oh, this is not the same. Yeah. This is not the same. And I realized I like, I like politics, and I like kind of pushing for certain policies, and so I was very happy to go back to the inside.
Yeah, that seems to happen a lot with comms people too, especially after the Hill, is they'll go to private sector comms or to a different type of political comms, and they realize this just isn't the same, and they end up back on the Hill again. I feel like once you've moved at the pace of the Hill, everything else kind of feels slow too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but so obviously in your time in the military and then coming to DC and working in offices where you've said there's really good culture, what kind of notes have you taken from a leadership perspective? What have you seen work really well in those environments? Because there are a lot of Hill offices where staffers might feel like there's a lack of leadership in that office, or they feel like there's not a good culture in there. And so how can the individual help strive towards a better culture, but how can a leader be part of that process too? Because even staff assistants can be leaders on the Hill. You might have a few interns that you're in charge of, and so everyone kind of has those opportunities. So any thoughts there?
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking exactly what you alluded to at the end, that you may not think that you're in a leadership position because you're not the chief of staff or you're not the legislative director, but no, absolutely not. If you have one of those jobs, chances are that you have some subordinates or some people that you're in charge of. At the minimum, you're in charge of how you present yourself, your morale. And so I would say that be an invested leader, right? Understand that you have an opportunity to impact the climate and the culture of that office. And sure, of course it comes from the top down, because that member is the face of the office. They're going to be kind of driving what the culture of that organization in that office is. But never underestimate what you can do. Like you said, even if you're the staff assistant, even if you're the press assistant, you have the ability to go in there and just impact change, and not in an overbearing way, right? Not saying that. Again, at the end, there is a structure, there is hierarchy. As a Marine, I have to say that, because we're very obviously based on hierarchy and structure and rank and everything else. So there is, there's obviously job titles and people that are in charge, so you have to adhere to that. But at the end of the day, you also have an ability, right, to impact either the interns or those around you, right? So if you're the comms director, you have a comms team, right? Make sure you communicate with them. I think the biggest way to lose people and to really break down morale if your employees don't think that they're getting the information. Now you have people that think they're broken off from the rest of the team, and I think that is, if I'm looking back, I would say that was maybe one of the big challenges, or big kind of leadership gaps that I can see, right? Is just, and you have to make sure that people are bought in, right? And what's the best way to bring people in? For them to feel like, oh, I have this information. They're filling me in because I'm important, right?
Sure.
And sometimes it could be that even as comms director, I didn't have the answers, right? But letting them know that, look, this is what I have at the moment that I'm able to share, that I know, and that makes people feel good, right? And so the minute that kind of some folks feel like they're not part of the team, I think that starts kind of a slippery slope and just a bad climate.
Yeah, for sure. I remember a few moments in an office that I absolutely loved and had a great time. There was a great culture. There were a few times where it was like, I just learned something about my boss on Twitter. And that's just a terrible spot to be in, and you don't ever want to feel that way. And so I think that's just where my mind went immediately of fill your team in with what you've got, or you know, just let them know before you're getting a call from a reporter. Yes,
absolutely. And your boss says something out in the hallway, you can't, right? that you can't really help. But if you can help it, absolutely fill your team in. And also, I think feedback. I think that is something the Marine Corps, you have to do. It's built into the structure of our system. Every I think it's twice a year that you have to sit down with subordinates and talk them through the performance, good and bad. Obviously, the good is easy, the bad is uncomfortable. But I think that is something that probably the Hill could be a little better at, is just keeping people informed about how you think that they're performing and doing, right? Because chances are maybe they don't know, right? There's a couple of maybe they don't know that there's things that they could be doing better. So if you fill them in, they'll make those course corrections. Maybe they don't care, and then maybe they could find another place, a place with more fulfillment. But if and then also positive feedback. So positive feedback and negative if needed. But I think if you only do the negative, well, that's not good, right? Because then you're just going to, again, lose people, and they're not going to be interested. And it's a tough job. It's a 24/7, and you don't get paid like a doctor or lawyer, right? And so it's high hours, very demanding. You're on call all of the time. And so if you're going to have that if you're going to have employees that are able to keep up with that kind of pace, right, and buy into that, I think it needs to be transactional, right? You need to give them something as well, which could be information, feedback, and performance, I think is huge.
For sure, yeah. And jumping back to anyone can be a leader, I in my mind, I have it broken up of their cultural leaders and like positional leaders, and you can be both or just one, but both would be best if you're in a position of authority. But I think anyone can go into the office each day and set a tone. Like, I'm going to walk in the door and be joyful, like be kind to people, like have a good mindset on things. And over time, that is infectious. People might kind of roll their eyes at first or whatever, but I really do think that type of cultural leadership can go a long way. And have you seen circumstances of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if people come in and are just seem happy to be there, right? I think that is infectious, right? Like that's contagious. People are going to be like, okay, cool. I like being here, right? Because this person isn't miserable. So just not being miserable and negative all of the time, I think really goes a long way, right? That's something that I think I like to bring to the table, is just be positive. My husband might say not all of the time, but he gets to see the real me. But when I go to work, I like to think that, that I'm there to increase morale a little bit, right? By, again, those little things of just coming in with a positive attitude, like a can-do attitude, right? And I think that's the best thing that especially young staffers can start to kind of build into who they are as a professional, is be the person that your bosses can rely on, right? Be the ones that say, yes, let's do it. How can we do this? How can we help? And do any job, right? It doesn't matter. Like nothing. I think sometimes you get recent college grads that might think certain things are beneath them. Like that's not good, right? Just do any job, any task, and you're going to make some incredible headway in your career.
For sure. And switching topics a little bit, but so many staffers come to the Hill and have that dream of, I want to work in leadership one day. You're blessed to have that opportunity at the highest levels, and it's extremely cool. Even to just work in those offices, to work inside the Capitol is such a cool opportunity. How is it like working in leadership? Okay. What's the difference that you've seen versus working in a regular office? And how may people get there over
Yeah.
time?
So I had a very unique into leadership. Okay. So I'm going to take another step back. Sorry. So I think one piece of advice that I'd like to start out with is that treat every interaction like an interview, right? If it's a coffee at the Dunkin' Donuts in Longworth, if it's a coffee at Cups over on the Senate side, if it's someone junior, senior than you, doesn't matter, because that junior person might be your boss or might be connected to an office you might want to work in. So treat everything like an interview, professional interaction, because you never know how that's kind of gonna intertwine with something in your future. So that's the best thing you can do. And so fast forward, it was kind of a very unique way how I got a chance to work in leadership. So I'd done the two years with Scott's office. Like I said, I was miserable at CBS News. And then there was I remember a snowy winter day. Our kids had a snow day in February, and I got a LinkedIn message by Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy staffer at the time, who said, "Hey, we're looking to build our team. Are you interested in applying?" And I was like, "Is this spam? Like, how did?" I mean, God knew that I was looking for something, but how did he know? It was just the timing was just crazy. It was insane, and so of course I messaged back, and fast forward, I think a month or month and a half from that, I had the job opportunity. So
man, that's a dream right
so,
there.
right? I'm just a LinkedIn message. So open the LinkedIn messages. You never know what could be in them. And so I always, Matt Sparks out there, like always credit him with the opportunity I was given to work for leadership, right? Yeah. Because there's nothing like that. When I'm second in line to the president. Here I am on his team. I get a chance to really shape news cycles, really to influence what's being said, what people are talking about, advising him on these big major moments. And if you think back to 2019, I was there from 2019 to 2023, a lot of big moments, right?
Yeah,
You had COVID, you had two big impeachments, some election, right? So huge news cycles. And so to be there and again have that trust to guide a team, influence and impact what's being said, what the office is talking about, because it's not just his office, right? We're really guiding and being a leader for the rest of the conference, right? Yeah. So now you're talking about 200 plus offices that are looking at us, what we're saying, for them to know what they should be messaging on, right? And so that was a huge deal. The weight of it, I never lost sight of that, right? And I know you remember me from some of those communication meetings, and for me, it was always such a big deal because I could imagine that maybe some of those young staffers sitting in their offices who, house offices, smaller staffs, a lot going on, a lot of different issues. So I always made sure to prepare for those and hopefully, give those young staffers the tools that they needed to effectively message on behalf of their bosses.
Yeah, and I think this is the great final question here. How does a young person who is either just starting off in communications or wants to go down that route, how do they prepare themselves to set themselves up to be a good political communicator?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, the best thing you can do is always think about people, right? And for me, I think I started working on the Hill a little later than most, right? I was 30, which is ancient when you think about Hill ages. And so for me, I've never lost sight of people, right? Whether it was Marines, veteran population that I was obviously more able to kind of communicate with, whether it was just people like my parents, right? And or just families, right? I felt like, how can I convey this information that will impact them, right? That will resonate with them, that they'll be able to understand what's happening on Capitol Hill, why it's important to them. And so I think that's the best thing you can do. Never lose sight of why you're there, right? Because it could be easy. There's a lot of fun stuff happening, it's cool and it's exciting, but never lose sight of why you're there. You're there because of constituents. And so if you never forget that you're communicating for them, then I think that'll set you up for a good, strong path.
Yeah, and I think it'll protect you from doing some more rogue things as a communicator too.
Yes.
You get in those moments where you want to get that big tweet, and so you might say something ridiculous, which I've done. I get it. Everyone's done it. It's okay. But when you keep that intention of, I want to focus on the people back in the district, like who are we truly communicating for here?
Yeah.
What are we trying to communicate? And being extremely like methodical about that process, I think it sets you up and puts you in a little safety net. You might not get the best Twitter results, but you're going to be communicating with the people that truly matter. And I think we all forget that as communicators sometimes.
Yeah, going after that viral tweet if you're 23, not a good idea. Not a good idea. Like, it's not, no one's going to ever go after you because you're like, you communicated to people, you communicated to your constituents. But if you're starting to go a little crazy off the rails on Twitter to get maybe 2 or 3 likes or get slammed, or maybe, you know what's worse? Maybe you lose out on a job opportunity. A lot of job seekers or a lot of job employers out there, they're looking through your social media before they even call you. And so, you know what? It's always better to have a clean social media. So if you're in your 20s, I'd actually just retweet your boss, right? And keep it clean.
Yeah, don't chase the dopamine hits.
Yeah,
I feel like that's why I was doing it,
It's easy to get sucked in that cycle because everyone's doing it and you're like, oh, this is cool. But, normal people aren't living their lives on Twitter. They're out there having fun. So, think about those people.
Yeah. Well, Michele, thank you so much for being on. We had a great time here.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, David.
Thanks again for tuning in to the Capitol Spotlight podcast. If you enjoyed the show today, be sure to subscribe to our channels to stay updated on our latest releases and get our shows early. Share the show with your friends and rate us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. For more from Connect, follow us on our social media, Connect app, CNCT app, and subscribe to our daily newsletters and check out our website. It's capitalconnect.com. Capital is spelled with an O. See you next time.